So here you go.
That's not what McPherson says. This is pathetic. McPherson does not advocate doing nothing. It's like you have not even listened to him. He gives the same talk over and over. He also walks the walk and doesn't drive around aimlessly wasting CO2. Unsubscribed.
And my answer to that was, so what does one do when one is hopelessly doomed and can't do anything about it? You know, I mean, I've given McPherson a fair hearing, and basically what he says is we're screwed. He says, you know, that we've got 9 years and mankind is going to be extinct. We're facing a Permian extinction level event because of global warming. So, and that it's out of our hands, that it's a done deal, it's a done data. Okay, so if the CO2 emissions from the Arctic outstrip mankind's CO2 emissions, I mean, you know, what difference does it make how much I drive my car? You know what I mean? To make a video. And it just so happens I was coming back from somewhere and I was in the car and it was going to be a short video. The first part of the video is I'm just driving back from my brother's house. You know what I mean? And I actually, it's driving to and from my brother's house because I was going to do it. It was going to be a quick and dirty kind of thing. So it ended up being longer than that. In any case, I want to thank everybody that put a negative rating on here, because you told me right here this negative rating is like a fucking badge of honor. You're telling me that I must have hit the nail right on the head. And here's the problem that I have with McPherson and that whole thing. If anybody remembers the 99% movement in America back in 2010, 11, around that time frame, they had a movement and they could have consolidated into it. All they had to do to put forward some actual real change from the 99% movement, all they needed was a list of demands and some leadership. But they said, you know, they wouldn't put together a list of demands, and they said, no, man, we don't need any leaders. And you have to have a representative. You have to have someone to represent your viewpoint. You have to have representation. What they did was something that you would typically find from anarchists. What he said about anarchists is that you don't have leaders. The difference between chaos and anarchy is that chaos, there's no rules, and anarchy, there's no leaders, or something like that.
I used anarchism in my classrooms. It's not a bad thing. Chaos is the absence of rules. Anarchy is the absence of rulers, just to be clear. Anarchism means taking responsibility for yourself and for your neighbors, human and otherwise. So I was modeling anarchism in my classrooms, and as it turns out, the deep state didn't really appreciate that.
I don't believe I really misrepresented him. I believe that what he's putting forth is fundamentally bad for anybody who cares about the environment. And the reason it's fundamentally bad for anybody who cares about the environment is because anarchism, that brand of anarchism, kind of keeps you from having leadership. I mean, so is he, and if he's a leader, what is he a leader of? He's a leader of doom, you know, right? A leader of hopelessness? Because, I mean, what the fuck, man? If we're doomed, then, and it's hopeless, I mean, what is that, how is that supposed to, like, galvanize anybody? How can that possibly galvanize anybody? You know, and this guy's all unsubscribed. Well, okay, fuck you. You know, good riddance, motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? There's only one crime on YouTube. There's a couple of crimes. The two crimes that you can commit on YouTube, the irretrievable sins that you can commit, is A, not being very entertaining, and B, being a pussy. There's more on that on my next video. File that away. So, you know, dude, really? You know? And I get some interesting comments here. Everyone has an opinion, and with a climate that's rapidly changing the world, all people need to wake up, and Guy is just one of us with an opinion. My opinion, Fukushima is what will kill us faster than climate. Okay. You know, I don't know. I doubt it, frankly. And the reason is that Chernobyl was way, 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 way worse than Fukushima ever was. This is why Chernobyl was worse. Because of the fucking fire. Something that a lot of people don't realize. Okay? I remember distinctly back in the 80s. See how they have these guys, this is statues of the firefighters with fire hoses. It brings tears to my eyes whenever I think about this. Watching these poor sons of bitches. God. Such terrible. God awful. Wow. Holy shit. That's the knot. That's the meltdown material right there. Chernobyl's hot mess, the elephant's foot. There it is right there. Okay. Here's why Chernobyl was worse. Chernobyl was worse because a lot of people don't realize this. Uranium and plutonium, materials like that, but uranium is pyrophoric. That right there, that's photoshopped. So one of the most striking images, and you can see this right here, this dude right here. One of the most striking images was of the firemen. They had a bunch of guys standing on, they were up on the roof with fire hoses, squirting water down into the pile, into the nuclear pile that was on fire. Uranium is pyrophoric. It burns. It was on fire. And so that smoke burned for days, and all those guys are dead. All those guys that were squirting with fire hoses, that's why you see this statue of these guys, these firefighters right here. These guys are all dead. They were dead. They gave their lives rapidly. They had died within days. Standing on that roof, pouring water down on a burning pile of nuclear material. And the reason it was worse is because that smoke, that nuclear, highly radioactive smoke, poured up, and contaminated swaths of Europe. And a good friend of mine had thyroid cancer back in 2004. He spent a lot of time outdoors. I have no doubt whatsoever that his thyroid cancer is probably directly associated with Chernobyl. So, yeah, Chernobyl was worse. It just, I don't know, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad, but I don't believe that their pile was on fire. I do believe that the pile was contained underwater. What this explosion here was hydrogen gas blowing the roof off of reactors. What is it, fourth reactor? Yeah, that was bad. Fukushima was bad, no doubt about it. But you didn't have a burning pile. It was underwater. So, one saving grace. Now, many tons of radioactive water is leaking out into the Pacific, which is bad. It's bad for the local area, but, the amounts that you're talking about are really kind of sort of minuscule. By the time that material gets over to the west coast of America, it's pretty dilute. And I would suggest to look at Thunderfoot.
Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're watching AMTV Alternative Media Television. I have a breaking report on the Fukushima radioactive nuclear disaster, which I believe is probably the worst nuclear disaster we have had in history.
And is leaking actively radiation into the Pacific Ocean, contaminating our coastline, contaminating our ecosystem, contaminating our fish and our food supply. And you're only getting, I would suspect, 0.5% of the truth.
And if alternative media TV is where you're getting your information, he's probably right.
Please help us investigate this. Get this out everywhere. Make this video viral. You can take a look at some of the amazing images yourself, some of the Fukushima radiation maps. I'll provide all the links below. Here we have a nuclear fallout map. Video viral.
Everybody, I assume most people out there know that this right here is about wave heights. It's a terrible looking image, right? It looks like a big flame coming, but it's wave heights. It has nothing to do with radiation. That's been well trodden, a well trodden thing. Anyway, I would watch the many videos that Thunderfoot has done on the subject. And Thunderfoot he's got a PhD in chemistry, I believe. He's a nuclear researcher. He's in nuclear facilities all the time. That's what he does. So if anybody knows about it, Thunderfoot knows about it. And so he's done a number of videos about this. So anyone concerned about Fukushima or that issue, I would suggest looking at a number of videos that Thunderfoot has done on the subject. Just Google Thunderfoot Fukushima, just like I just did now, and he will square you away on that without a doubt. I mean, I know we get stuck on stuff, and frankly, the jury is out on the methane thing anyway. I just saw, and it was uploaded in December, Arctic methane budget new estimate by NOAA.
In essence, this whole scheme is playing off of the spatial gradients that we get from our network observations. So what I'm showing you here is the growth rate of methane as a function of latitude from our atmospheric network. And you can see that there's information in here potentially about what sort of methane sources are varying and where they're varying. So you see a lot of variability in the tropics. There's times when the growth rate in the tropics is really increasing rapidly and times when it's decreasing. And likewise, if you look at a year like 2007, when we know it was really warm and wet in the Arctic, you see that the growth rate was unusually large there. So it's this kind of observational information that atmospheric or inversions are using to get information about the fluxes of methane and how they're varying over time. So it turns out there's quite a lot of us doing these kind of calculations all over the world. And recently, as part of the AMAP report, we took a look at results that various groups are producing, and we compared them. And so here you can see, I'm not going to bore you with which inversions are from which group, but you can see that there's not a whole lot of agreement on the north-south distribution of methane emissions. And these groups are using, different first guesses. They're using different transport models, different data. Some of them are using space-based column average methane, some are not. So you can see here that although we know the general
teragrams
way
per year
methane emissions vary with latitude, we don't really agree very well ultimately on the distribution of the emissions. Now the blue box in the high latitudes is what I want to focus on for the rest of this talk, because what I want to talk about is how do we know what the budget of Arctic methane emissions are? And if we use one of these top-down atmospheric observation approaches, does that agree with what we learn when we go out in the field and measure fluxes directly? So when we go out in the field and measure fluxes directly, that's called the bottom-up approach. And so I've compiled in the table here some fairly recent studies which use field measurements to and scale them up for the whole Arctic, and try to estimate what is the total effect of these processes. So there was a study by McGuire et al., a recap study in 2012 that looked at flux measurements spanning several decades, and they figure that 26 teragrams of methane per year are coming from the tundra wetlands. Then a while ago there was this, actually it's not in press anymore, it came out in 2015 I believe, but there was this excellent paper by Martin Vick et al., and they took a close look at high northern lakes.
All right,
and they
hold
found
on a second. So 76, she's basically saying it's roughly the total annual budget of Arctic methane is 76 trillion grams of methane per year. 76 trillion grams is, 76 million metric tons. 76 million metric tons. No, that's a lot. But now the big boogeyman is the catastrophic clathrate release. So, I got to look to these guys. What you're going to ask me, the question that you're asking is, do I trust this woman here, Dr. Lori Breweiler, and the people that she's working with, and the enormous number of people who generated all of this data? When this box right here, look at this box, right? That's the North Pole, so that makes sense, right? It drops off to zero at the North Pole, right? And then down to 60 degrees compared to the equator, which is 0 degrees, right? And then you have this region in here where the emissions are much greater. And this is the data that's accumulated by all these different people, by this mob, this literal mob of people have generated this data. So am I going to listen to that, or am I going to listen to McPherson? And what he's talking about is a catastrophic class rate emission. Now, having said that, this is an interesting point here.
Currents increasing, the movement of water beneath the sea ice increased. So everything looks anomalous. Even from our experience from this 10 years, everything looks anomalous. And this is what makes him
2012
thinking that, making him think that the worst thing might happen.
Look at this. In a matter of days, just days, we're having this huge area. Look at this. Going, almost exploding with methane.
Okay. Now, where is this guy getting this data from? That's my only question. Where is he getting his data from? It looks compelling. Okay. It looks compelling. So we're talking about 3/3/2013. This is Greenland. This is in the North Atlantic, on the Atlantic side. This is in the North Atlantic, where this alleged explosion of methane gas.
With methane.
And that's
the only way.
That is what he's saying. Yeah, that looks like a class rate type of thing. I would have to agree with that. But what I was going to say is, when I look at that, I said, well, that explains the Pacific blob. There's the blob. There's the Pacific blob, right? I've already made a video about this, that it's pretty clear to me that the Pacific blob was from methane, because the Pacific blob was said to have emitted ozone. So methane is a catalyst. It facilitates the production of ozone. So when I heard that, I put this together from talking to different people about, where's this ozone coming from? Because some people thought it was coming from Fukushima. Well, it's coming from methane. Methane is a catalyst that is known to produce ozone. It's part of the process, part of the chemistry part of atmospheric chemistry. This happened between 2013 and 2016. So there's kind of a sort of a convenient timeline, Here's Natalia Shakova, 2012, talking about, well, the worst thing might happen, and here's this dude talking about sometime in between February and March of 2013, this explosion of methane, and then we have the Pacific blob that takes place between 2013 and 2016, which has come and gone. But the only thing is the Pacific blob is in the Pacific. It's over here. It's on the other side of the planet from here, which is over by Greenland. So, and I looked at that and I was like, oh, well, damn, I guess, maybe they're not connected, or maybe they are. You got to look at the temperature data and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm looking at this, at this thing here, and it's like, okay, I would have really liked to have seen a link of some sort. I want to know what satellite, where he got this, where he's getting this data from. Where's this coming from? Because, you hear this lady talking, they don't really have a good way of estimating, but this guy's got some imaging equipment, some space-based imaging equipment or something that's able to tell you, oh yeah, this is methane right here. This is an explosion of methane, he says. So, okay, that's an explosion of methane here over this time period. And, gee whiz, I'd like to know a little bit more about that. I guess I have to... Doomsday. What this video is about, Methane Crazies, it's about the Doomsday narrative and what the Doomsday narrative does. The Doomsday narrative does a bunch of things. For one thing, it can sabotage the economy, create chaos, induce sexuality, because, damn, if we're all doomed anyway, well, shit, we might as well just get laid. I don't have to, save that until I'm in better economic situation. I might as well just get laid.
Especially important to the Russians because they have a horrendous death rate.
You know what I mean? Because the whole reason of not getting laid is, well, I don't have my shit together. I don't have enough money, really, to, to go out and get laid. But now, well, since the world is coming to an end, I might as well just get laid, because we have a labor shortage. This is another part of that whole fucking thing. Let's come to Jesus. Come to Jesus is about, money in the basket. That's 10% of your gross income for tithes and things like that. And then some people get into their whole revenge thing, revenge of the disenchanted. They like the idea of doomsday. It's like everybody gets their fucking, it's like, oh, my life's not working too good, so good, doomsday. Now everybody gets theirs, fuck all y'all kind of sort of thing. So it's complicated, and, doomsday sells. If it bleeds, it leads. There's a reason that happens. It sells. It's, you can sell books behind doomsday, and it's like, this doomsday's been big business since business has been business. Since the dawn of man, doomsday has been big business. It's been big business at the church, to get people to the pew, you know what I'm saying? To sell books because fear sells. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't really, how can you, how can you forge any sort of movement or any sort of change if we're doomed? What are you trying to galvanize? If you're saying that that we're fucking doomed, which is what he's saying, does anybody disagree with that? This guy Nguyen down here, dude, really? The guy is saying that we're doomed. So McPherson does not advocate doing nothing. Okay, well, he says basically go and hug your family. You know what I mean? And tell them you love them because, you're doomed. Look at this. Climate scientists, we're fucked over methane. We're screwed. Dude, we're screwed. You know what I mean? So... what do you want from, it's like, Nguyen, what do you want from my fucking life, bro? You know what I mean? What the fuck do you want from my life, really? And then there's all these downvotes, right? And it's like, dude, really? Y'all can really just basically kiss, all you downvote motherfuckers can kiss my ass. You can kiss my ass and rotate on it. Anyway, that's all I got for this segment. My name is Art Crosby Lyle, and this is News from the Can.